Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you're new. My name is Sam and it is time to chat about all the books that I read in February. Even though February was a short month, I feel like it was a million years long. So some of these books I forgot I read in February because it has been so long. So this month I did end up reading 11 books, probably 12, but we'll get into that. Looking back on the books that I read, it was a very mid month, a lot of middle of the road, some very low rated books, nothing like super high, except for one. Anyway, let's just get into it and chat about the books that I read this month. Starting out, I was finishing off my Shadow Me journey and I read Imagine Me by Tahar Mafi. This was a 2-star. If you watched my reading vlog, you would know how I feel about this book. This is the last full-length novel in this series. I just really couldn't figure out what was going on. It was very repetitive. Any of the growth that we had made was gone. None of our characters were communicating about anything. No one was sharing any information. Yeah, just everyone was acting so bizarre. And in terms of like the bad guy, that really bothered me. Like why was it that person? I feel like it was the way that the world opened up in the series, they could have done something different. So unfortunately, the ending of the series was not a good one. I did enjoy Defy Me and Restore Me. Is that the two before this one? Overall, this is like a 3.5-star series, I think. Glad I read them. Finally, I'm talking about them for so long. Then I continued on with my Game Changers adventures and read Heat of Rivalry. This one I had gotten out from the library in audio, and so I listened to the majority of this one. I also had the ebook out, so I think I read like one, maybe 2 chapters physically. But I rated this 4 stars. This was so spicy. And I feel like the beginning of all the books in this series are a lot slower. It takes a bit to really get into the story and what is going on. But I really liked the deeper themes that were talked about in this. I love Ilya and Shane's relationship. I just love them so much. I can see why that they are everyone's favorite and they got the TV show made about them because they are the best. They're amazing. I love them. I just loved the way that they cared about each other, like the little things that you would notice. Oh, so good. Thoroughly enjoying getting through the series. Then immediately after that, I listened to Tough Guy, which is book 3 in the Game Changer series. This one I rated 3 stars. I didn't like this one as much, just the relationship wasn't my favorite. Like the tropes weren't my favorite. And neither was the spice. The spice kind of gave me the ick. But I did enjoy like the deeper themes, although in the books thus far, Rachel doesn't really delve into some of the more deeper topics, and I'm wondering if it all sort of comes together later on. But the Ilya cameos are too good. They're so funny. His like dry lines that he just spits out are hilarious. There was really good anxiety rep in this one, and the friendships were just amazing of everyone like showing up for each other, especially Fabian's friends. I really loved that part, like the really solid group of friends. Oh, so good. There was one part, like of the deeper themes, that came out later in the book that felt like it kind of came out of left field and tried to be like a deeper theme, but didn't really land for me personally. It felt a little random. I'm still having such a fun time. One thing I will say about the audiobooks is the same guy has narrated all of the ones that I've listened to, and it's just a little strange. I don't love his narration. Some of the, which I think this is like very common, like some of the accents and way that he says stuff is wild. Next, I did another audiobook listen, and this was Believe Me by Tahar Mafi. This is the final novella in the first series, because I know that there is now a spinoff. I rated this 1 star. I absolutely hated this. There was no communication anywhere. People were being mean for no reason. It wasn't like cute giggly. It was borderline insufferable. Did not like this one at all. At all. It was trying to do too much. I'm trying to do way too much. Yeah, just not. Next, I ended up reading Good Spirits by B.K. Borison. I was hoping to read this closer to Christmas, but my library hold just did not come in. So I do feel like I would have enjoyed it maybe a little bit more if I read it closer to Christmas, just being immersed in the cute holiday vibes. But I did end up rating this 4 stars. I thought this was really sweet. In this one, we are following Harriet, who gets followed by the ghost of Christmas past. And usually you are followed by the ghost of Christmas past because you are a terrible person. But Harriet is not a terrible person. So they're trying to figure out why she was visited by this ghost. It was so festive and so sweet and so funny. I just really loved the humor of it. Harriet's backstory was also so painful. It just hurt my heart. But I do feel like the ending was kind of rushed. I feel like more could have been done with it. And although it was very sweet, I wanted something a little bit more. I'm not sure what that was. Okay. Next, I read The Housemaid's Secret by Frida McFadden, and I think I enjoyed this one more than book 1. I did rate it 3 stars, but everyone in this book is so dumb. So Millie claims that she has been helping all these people and has all of this experience now, and yet she's making so many mistakes. Like, there were so many instances that, like, why didn't you catch this? Why didn't you catch this? Why didn't you check this? Why are you just blindly doing this? It was so ridiculous. And the other female main character, I don't even know what her name was. She was also, I don't know how she thought this was all going to work out, but it was definitely bingeable and a ride. So halfway through the series, just a novella and 1 book left, and then we'll be done. They're not great. Honestly, they're not the best writing I have ever read, but they do hold your attention. Next, I read Total Dreamboat by Caitlin Doyle, and I actually read this while I was on a cruise. I specifically tried to request a few books about cruising or about like being on a boat while I was on this cruise vacation. And so reading this while on a cruise and experiencing some of the like stereotypical cruise things was hilarious. I thoroughly enjoyed the humor. I thought it was really fun and seeing them go to these various cruise activities. And honestly, it was just like a ridiculous fun read. However, the end conflict was very lackluster to me. Just felt like it was added in there just to add in a conflict. But overall, this was a silly, fun time, solid 3 stars. Next, I read Wild Dark Shore by Charlotte McConaughey. I love this book. I was enthralled by it. I never knew who to trust. I thought the premise was so fascinating. In this one, we're following a family who is responsible for the caretaking of this island where they keep the world's seed storage in case of a natural disaster and they have to like rebuild essentially. But there's some shady things happening on this island. In the very beginning of the book, a woman washes up on the shore and she's trying to figure out what's going on. You can tell that everybody's keeping secrets, but you don't know what secrets they're keeping. And I didn't know who to trust, but it was also a story of like hope and resilience and climate change. And it was just such a fascinating read, also just of the human experience. Thoroughly enjoyed this one. I ended up rating this at 4.5 stars. I just really enjoyed it. I had a lucky hold from my library, so I only had this book for a week, and I didn't quite finish it off before it got returned. So I ended up listening to the last hour on audio, and the audiobook was also done very, very well. Yeah, I want everybody to read this so that I selfishly can talk to people, but there's a lot of grief in this book. So if you have any triggers, definitely check the trigger warnings because this is a very heavy read. Next, I read Accomplice to the Villain by Hannah Nicole Mayer. This is the 3rd book in the Assistant to the Villain series. I have been listening to these books on audio. They are not my favorite. I think I finally figured out that the narrator just does not do it for me, and also the writing is just not for me. There's some like overly explained, I don't know if that's the right phrase. They're just like unnecessary additional words or words that are changed in familiar phrases that just don't make sense or make the world more complex than it needs to be. And I also don't like the humor of our main character, Evie. I think she's just very like sarcastic, like juvenilely sarcastic. So it just doesn't work for me. I will be finishing out the series with the last book come the summer, but I don't think I will read anything else by this author, honestly. So 3 stars. It was fine. The ending definitely picked up for me. I find that also in all these books, I get to the end and I feel like we haven't advanced in the plot at all. I do feel like there was finally some advancement, but not much. Next, I ended up finishing Lady of Starfire by Melissa K. Rorick. I read this book over a long period of time, so I feel like that definitely did the book a little bit of a disservice, but I think I'm settling on a 3.5 star. I feel like there was a lot of talking and not a lot of doing, considering this is the last full-length book in the series. We're coming up to the final conflict, the final battle. There wasn't enough urgency, and there's also a lot of parts where the characters would share information with the other characters, but we would not be privy to that information. So there was just a lot of secrets and a lot of things that were not explained in advance. And when they finally were explained, they were still very convoluted and confusing and just didn't make sense. So overall, I think I did enjoy this series. I do like the way that it ended. It wasn't the way that I expected it to end, but I think some of the messaging that there was in the way that it ended and everything came together, and also the final battle of the big bad. I'm satisfied with the way that it ended. There was some threads that were tied up that I felt were a little bit too easy. So I don't know. Very conflicted about this series. I'm hesitantly optimistic that her other series are better. And then the last book that I finished so far is Common Goal by Rachel Reed. This is book 4 in the Game Changer series. In this one, we're following some characters that were side characters in book 1. So there's a lot of ties back to the previous books, which I really enjoyed. I thought this one was a lot of fun. It was like an age gap, friends with benefits situation, I guess, but also a little bit teaching, which was kind of didn't entirely work for me, but overall, this one again was so funny. I was giggling so many times at their banter, their flirting, and Ilya Rozanov just popping in and dropping his like one-liner, overly observant nature into this book. There's also a very heavy art theme in this book, which I thought was really fun. I really enjoyed the characters' like other hobbies and things, but I couldn't picture the art at all. And so I think again that one for me is like a 3 star. And then the last book that I'm going to talk about very briefly is We Fell Apart by E. Lockhart. I have just started this book yesterday, and I do, though, think that I will finish it before the end of the month, which is just tomorrow. So I might just pop in a little clip on what my full feelings are about this book, but I'm really enjoying it so far. I don't want to put it down. So, hi everybody, I'm just popping in really quickly to share my final thoughts on We Fell Apart by E. Lockhart. I did end up finishing this on the last day of the month, and I ended up rating it 3.5 stars, I believe. I really enjoyed reading this book, my experience reading this book. It was very bingeable. I didn't want to put it down. It was very addictive because knowing how We Were Liars went and the twists that we got in those books, I was kind of waiting for something to happen. And I'll be honest, I guessed the majority of the twists. I saw most of the things coming. So that really wasn't a surprise, and I feel like the ending kind of wrapped up in a nice little bow. Like some of the characters' choices in the like epilogue, I feel like it didn't really make sense. But overall, I really enjoyed it. There was a lot of tie-ins to the We Were Liars series. So if you haven't read those books, I would highly recommend reading those first because it gives there's a lot of information in this book. But I'll throw it back to the rest of this video and close this one out. Those are all the books that I read in February. Not quite as crazy of a reading month as I thought I was going to have, but fingers crossed for March. Let me know down below what your favorite book that you read this month was. I would love to chat with you and increase my ever increasing TBR. If you do want to find me on the other corners of the internet, all of my links are linked down below. I hope that you have a great rest of your week, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.